Hey guys, what is up? Steven back here with a training camp notebook. Was at practice today on Tuesday, August 6th. So of course had to do a quick little report on what I saw, what I heard around the facility there today. Apologies for the lack of a setup down here in Newport on vacation, hence the sunburn and the beach house. So hopefully you guys can deal with it today. As always, make sure to like, subscribe, comment, all that stuff does help continue to grow the show. That being said, let's dive in today. All right, so first and foremost, have to address the quarterback situation. Obviously, Justin Herbert not practicing today. He was out on the practice field in his walking boot. There was a period of time where he was, running through some things, lots of hand gestures and things like that of him supporting Easton and the rest of the quarterbacks. So he was out there. He was working out before the practice started. So it seems like he's at least in good spirits right now, as far as I can tell. But, Easton Stick, there's a lot of things going on around, like the fan base just has not been super positive or optimistic about Easton Stick potentially filling in. Some reporting saying that the offense is struggling and Easton Stick is just not living up to the bill. And I think there is some truth to the fact that he is struggling a bit. But Greg Roman had some comments today that I thought were interesting in that, they are not necessarily scheming things right now. They're not trying to find solutions to what the Chargers defense is doing. And that might sound a little counterintuitive, but their main goal right now is to throw everything at this offensive roster that they possibly can from a scheme standpoint. They're trying to figure out what they can do well. And so from a coaching standpoint, losing your starting quarterback in training camp puts you in a bit of a bind. And so Greg Roman today said that they threw a huge chunk of install at this offense yesterday. That's why they did a walkthrough if you had practice yesterday or didn't get many takeaways from yesterday from the beat reporters. They were doing a walkthrough because they were trying to throw so many new things at this offense. And a lot of that is because Justin Herbert is injured and Easton Stick is not Justin. He spoke about this as well, at his media session on Sunday, after the Rams joint practice. And he was like, I'm not Justin. I can't do the same things that Justin could do. So I think, I'm kind of in between here. As I've said on Twitter and things like that, I do think that there's a middle ground with Easton Stick. I don't think he's nearly as bad as certain parts of the fan base believe he is. But he is struggling a bit right now. Some of that is circumstantial, which we'll get into later today. He didn't have Ladd McConkey was not out there today. Quentin was not practicing today. Whether or not you think that's a positive or negative is another question, but he wasn't out there. The offensive line was kind of a mess today. The offensive line was a mess against the Rams. And Greg Roman they're not like building a game plan around what Easton does well. I thought I saw maybe one bootleg today. I didn't see any RPOs. I didn't see anything else. So they're really trying to figure out what it is this Easton Stick offense can look like. And this is a brand new experience for this coaching staff. So have there been some missed throws from Easton Stick? Yes, 100%. I think that is a fair assessment. But he's also made some really good throws. There were some really good throws today that I saw. A couple of Josh Palmer, a couple of Will Dissly, a couple of Brendan Rice, which we'll talk about here in a second. So it's not all doom and gloom. I do think that he is very firmly like quarterback 2. And if Justin misses any games, Easton Stick is the quarterback who is going to start. And I happen to think that they would be able to build a good enough offense to function at a higher level than they did last year. And maybe that's the 20th best offense in the league, but really that's kind of all you're hoping for in a backup quarterback situation. So, I don't think it's as doom and gloom as a lot of people are painting the picture on social media. Yes, Easton Stick is not an elite backup. Yes, he is not Justin Herbert, but I think this offensive ecosystem can survive with Easton Stick playing in a pinch if they have to at a much higher rate than they could previously. And I do think that Easton is a little bit underrated. I think he's grown a lot as a processor. I think he makes a lot of throws that he couldn't, a few years ago. So be a little bit more understanding of the situation, I guess, and understand that Easton is a talented football player. He is somebody who can in my opinion, be a winning backup quarterback in this league. Just the situation has to be right, and right now they're pushing the limits, I think, of seeing what that can look like. So, it is what it is there. Otherwise, in the quarterback room, the Chargers did sign Luis Perez, the UFL passing leader, and he was also the XFL Championship MVP in 2023. He's noted as the king of the spring. A lot of people, with the initial reporting, were saying that this is too challenge for the backup position. I strongly disagree with that assessment. Again, this to me is more about Max Duggan and Casey Bauman really struggling to get up to par. It's just not a situation where they can get a fair assessment of the second team offense right now because of the struggles of Max Duggan and Casey Bauman. So those two effectively splitting reps between the second and the third teams, and there's just not enough NFL throws there to be had on a consistent basis. That to me is why they are bringing in Luis Perez, because he is somebody who could come in and stabilize the second team offense right now. Maybe that turns into a roster spot. I think with Justin's injury, that might be more of a possibility than we had assumed previously. They seemed pretty impressed from Luis's workout from yesterday, and we'll see where this goes. But I can confidently say that this is not to challenge Easton Stick. This is about him being a legitimate NFL thrower, which Max Duggan and Casey Bauman, unfortunately, are just not at this point in time. I think if you could combine those two players, you could get that quarterback and have that quarterback challenge for a potential roster spot. But right now, neither of those two players can process the field. They don't see anywhere in the middle of the field the way that they should. Max Duggan is very trigger shy. He's not making throws on the right time. I saw consistently today when they were doing 7-on-7 drills where Max Duggan would scramble or he would take off. Like he's not a confident thrower of the football right now. And it's hurting the skill position players. It's hurting the offense. And so I think that is why they are signing Luis Perez. I think the offense will kind of start to figure it out a little bit more with Easton Stick as they kind of put more game planning stuff in, as opposed to let's just throw shit at the wall and see what's working or not. So I think some positive on the horizon for Easton Stick, in my opinion. Okay, next one here. I went into today's practice with the intention of trying to figure out really where this defensive back ecosystem is at. Unfortunately, Derwin James did not practice today, which obviously Derwin is the pillar figure of the Chargers defense right now, and specifically the defensive back room. And Christian Fulton did not practice today. So that was a bit of a bummer because he's had a fantastic training camp, and I wanted to gauge where I'm at personally with him. Definitely more positive than I was a few weeks ago, but I was really hoping to get, eyes on him in person and see where he's at. But, it is what it is. I think there's still some positive takeaways to have from this practice today. Chris Rim tweeted out a clip today, and I was right next to him, of the Steve Klinkscale coaching up the defensive backs. And there was a moment in that clip where he is yelling at them to essentially stop playing soft and be more physical. And that happened again later on in practice when they were doing 9-on-7 drills. And this time it was actually Jesse Minter went up to them and was giving them a pep talk, if you will. And I think that physicality really showed up today. It showed up against the Rams, according to Daniel Popper and others who were there, that this secondary, specifically led by Derwin James and Alohi Gilman, have really kind of cranked up the physicality and intensity at training camp. And I think that shows up everywhere in a variety of ways. And I think the way that this cornerback room in particular is playing the football, I'm a huge fan of. I think they're aggressive at the catch point. I think they're actively practicing ball skills and trying to create turnovers. They're going to be aggressive. They're going to take chances. And yes, that has backfired on occasion in practice, and it did against the Rams as well. But I think when you are building out this room that doesn't necessarily have like high-end talent, to me, it makes sense to say, hey, like, let's go be aggressive and let's be physical. Let's create havoc. Let's, lean more in the margins than being safe and passive and soft, which is what unfortunately we saw of the previous regime. So that was great to see. I loved hearing all of the communication that this secondary employs. And it's just at a truly next level environment, in my opinion. There was no music today, so you hear everything. And like I mentioned, no Derwin, no Christian Fulton today, but you hear every single player on every single play in the secondary. I wanted to just focus in on that. So you hear Alohi, you hear AJ Finley, you hear Dean Leonard, you hear Asante. They're all talking to each other, Jasir Taylor, and the communication is just ramped up so much from what I am used to personally from this secondary group. So I think similar to the offensive line ecosystem, where I'm kind of buying into this coaching staff being able to maximize this secondary room. And again, maybe that is not lending itself towards any elite players by any means this year. But maybe they can get the best possible version of Christian Fulton, of Asante Samuel Jr., of Jasir Taylor, of Dean Leonard, and put a serviceable, reliable, potentially above average cornerback room out there. And I think that's a huge win, especially for Jesse Minter's future head coaching candidacy, unfortunately. But I think the ecosystem that group is creating is just really, really top notch. And I think everybody in that room is bought into the system, bought into, the overall plan of each specific player. And there are some different tweaks for these players that I'm noticing, which we can get into. But I did also want to give a shout out to Dean Leonard today. He was fantastic in practice in one-on-one situations. He had 2 pass breakups. In 7-on-7, he had a pass breakup. He also had a tipped ball that led to an interception from Tarheeb Still in team drills. So Dean Leonard was all over the football today. And it was against a variety of receivers. Again, some of this is against not ideal quarterback play. He's not, dealing with a picture perfect pass from Justin Herbert, but he's in the right positions. He's being aggressive. He's being physical. And he was firmly ahead of the other cornerbacks in terms of snaps outside of Christian Fulton. So he is your CB3, in my opinion. Cam Hart, unfortunately just has not gotten many opportunities there. Dean, even when Christian Fulton was healthy, has been getting first-team reps. Christian Fulton mentioned that there are times where he'll move into the slot. I asked him about that, and Dean is the one who will come in on the field after that. So he looks like he's taken a tremendous step forward. He has all the physical tools, obviously, played at the tail end of last season before getting hurt. And I'm thrilled with where he's at with his development. Okay, we're kind of going positive, negative here. The offensive line injuries today were crazy to me. Obviously, Jamari is out. Trey Pipkins did not practice today. We didn't get any updates or anything like that, but he warmed up. He went through individual drills and then did not participate in any kind of team drills. So we have no idea what's there. That could have just been a rest thing, as we've heard. So with the first-team offense, Jordan McFadden and Foster Sorrell were getting reps at right guard between the two of them. They were essentially swapping drives, from what I could tell. Foster Sorrell would go left team. Both of them would play second team and first team. They would swap it, rotate in the first team, and then play their usual spots with the second team. Well, then about halfway through the first team session, Jordan McFadden leaves practice for that day, and it just created a ripple effect. Obviously, that was huge. So Foster Sorrell then becomes the permanent right guard in the first team unit, which again was kind of newer. It had been like a Hymas, Bradley Bozeman kind of, swapping of roles. But I think I think if anything happens during the season, I think Hymas would play in front of Sorrell. But I think they're kind of wanting the center position to be settled right now because of the quarterback position. So Foster Sorrell played right guard, which I don't believe he's ever done in his career before. And it was a rough day for the interior offensive line because of that. Zion and Bozeman, I think, both had quality practices. I thought Brendan Hymas had a quality practice, but everybody around them just really, really struggled. And we'll get to some standouts later here today, but the defensive line was in the backfield all day long. and multiple defensive linemen, just because that's just you're down your 3 starting right guards. Essentially, you're playing a career backup swing tackle at right guard. There's Willis Patrick and Brent Lang were your 2 second team guards. It was not a tenable situation for the offense. Again, this is what I'm talking about. Like, yeah, the offense kind of struggled a bit today, but you're missing 3 starting quality offensive linemen, in my opinion. So it just was tough. The other thing I wanted to ask Greg Roman today was about Alex Leatherwood and Foster Sarell's battle for swing tackle. He says it's a dead heat. In the 3 days that I have been at practice, I think Alex Leatherwood is a significantly better run blocker than Foster Sarell. I think that is popping on tape, or not on tape. I'm not watching tape, but it's popped in person from what I can tell. I do think Foster is probably a better pass protector. So it's a bit of give and take here. And I think that's kind of where it's like, okay, like what kind of role do we envision for these 2 players? What kind of versatility can these 2 players have? They tested Foster out at right guard today. Maybe tomorrow Alex Leatherwood gets right guard snaps. We'll see what happens there. But I think if one of these 2 players had to play, I think they would choose Alex Leatherwood just because of his ability as a run blocker. Because you can scheme up a bit more creatively some pass protection help. But I don't know. I do kind of agree that it is neck and neck. Alex Leatherwood didn't have a couple of bad reps against Thule in pass protection today. Granted, it's Thule, but it's notable. I do think Foster is a better pass protector at this point in time. So very excited to see what that happens and what that looks like in preseason, because that's obviously going to be a huge tell for us of who could potentially win that battle. Do both of them earn a roster spot? We're getting right into the thick of that specific position battle, but I would give Leatherwood a slight edge right now. Okay, every time I go to practice, I always get asked about Brendan Rice, so I figured I would update you guys there. Quentin Johnston practiced in some capacity today. It was good to see him back. He was not a full participant. I think you can never mind, that's not back. That's Gus back in the background. But Brendan Rice essentially played the Quentin Johnston role today. What that is, I'm starting to figure out, is a lot of crossing routes and a lot of post routes, a lot of slant routes. And I think that fits Brendan and Quentin's specific skill sets very, very well. They're actually very similar players. Obviously, one's a 7th rounder, one's a 1st rounder. But stylistically, I think that's the kind of vision I'm getting for Brendan Rice, is give him some yards after catch opportunities, give him some vertical opportunities, but not a ton. Similar to Quentin, I think he does struggle to play through contact. I think his ball skills are a bit subpar. I mentioned the pass breakups. You saw the picture earlier. When he is given opportunities to be physical at the catch point, he's often getting beat in those opportunities by Dean Leonard, by Tareeb Still, etc. But if you can give him a runway, he actually is a lot better after the catch than I think people realized as a prospect. I think that was really the main thing I liked about him, and that is showing up so far. So, again, if your expectation is DJ Chark goes down, Brendan Rice is the backup X, I don't think that's the case. I think Brendan Rice is your backup Quentin, even though Quentin's wide receiver 4. But I do think Brendan would play ahead of that. So I do think Brendan Rice has created some separation in terms of wide receiver 5. Darius Davis has some role, which we'll get into in a minute here. Cornelius Johnson is really a 3rd-team wide receiver. So Brendan Rice is, I think, firmly wide receiver 5. I think Quentin is firmly wide receiver 4. But today was Brendan's first time that I saw get actually like meaningful reps in the 1st-team offense. He got a few targets from Easton stick. It was kind of a mixed bag, but again, when you give him a longer runway, put him in motion, slant, post, corner, those kind of routes, he can do really, really well. And I think it was Easton Stick's best throw of the day is the one pictured here, where he was able to kind of fit it in between 3 Chargers defenders. There was one here on the right of the picture, and it was really good, pitch and catch from the 2 of them. The other thing that was interesting is this was the second day, I believe the Chargers had really kind of introduced their plans for the new kickoff role. And Brendan Rice is very involved as a potential returner. There were multiple times that I saw that Brendan and Darius were back there together. There were some other times where it was Brendan and Jalen Gill, or Brendan and Elijah Dotson, or Brendan and Elijah and Isaiah Spiller. But Brendan was involved. He did muff a punt or muff a kick on one of them. It was kind of a weird like knuckleball from Cameron Dicker. But the second return that he had was actually very, very good. So this is probably a new thing for him. He's probably never returned kicks. I guess I could look that up. But again, I think his ability after the catch is playing a role here. His vision as a runner showed up in this moment. Unfortunately, we didn't get to see many returns of Darius, but Brendan got a couple of returns. Isaiah Spiller got a couple of returns. And then Jalen Gill actually popped a big return for what it's worth. But Brendan, I think this is just kind of a way for him to diversify his skill set. And I think that was good to see. Okay, wrapping this up with other players that flashed. Have to start with Tremont Morris-Brash, the undrafted free agent from UCF. Is it just UCF? This is great live TV. It's been a long day, you guys. Yeah, UCF. Why did I think that was? There's another one from Colorado. Anyways, Tremont Morris-Brash was showing up all day long, and the Chargers today did this new to me drill where they had the edge rushers rush the passer against tight ends. And Morris-Brash was the only tight end that he did not beat was Will Dissly. He beat the other tight ends handedly in a pass rushing drill. Again, that's his job. Their job is not traditionally blocking edge rushers, but he popped big time in that moment. He had a great cross chop on, I think it was Donald Parham. And then the other thing that he was, as this picture is showing here, his ability as a run defender showed up big time today. He can set the edge with power. He can rush with power. There's a versatile skill set here that I think is at least worth keeping on the practice squad. I think this is unfortunately an edge room that has 4 great players. And then you have Chris Rumpf, who's, popping and playing special teams and things like that as well. But Morris-Brash showed up today and definitely deserves mention there. I mentioned the big day from the defensive line today. Justin Eboigbe, to me, was the second team game wrecker. You see him in this picture as well. I thought he had a couple great reps. Again, the offensive guard situation right now is not great for this team, but Eboigbe was in the backfield at least twice from what I saw for tackles for loss and had a couple of pressures. So he was fantastic. I really hope that he can get some first team reps because again, if you watch my last video, I don't buy the defensive tackle room in front of him being that much better than him. So I would like to see that change. Deion Henley today was fantastic in coverage drills. He was fantastic in 7-on-7. He was fantastic in the team drills. He's having a tremendous training camp. Denzel Perryman did not practice in team drills today, so Deion Henley, obviously Junior Colson did not practice either. He was working off to the side in pads, sprinting for the first time that I saw. But Deion was essentially the linebacker one. He was calling plays. He's directing traffic. Anytime they were in team drills, you always heard Deion's voice. He is the loudest person on the Chargers defense unless Derwin James is there. And Denzel Perryman. But Deion Henley today was fantastic. There were multiple pass breakups, several times where he was the main person where in zone coverage, he's clogging the lane. He's covering so much ground. As a pass defender right now, it's just truly, truly impressive to see the mental leap more than anything else because he was always in the right position on every single pass drop back that I saw. So Chargers internally are very, very excited about Deion Henley. Obviously, you guys listening have been excited about Deion, wanted to see him get more pub last year, but he's taken a tremendous leap forward, and I'm really excited to see that. I didn't focus a ton on the tackles today outside of Alex Leatherwood, but listen, man, Joe Alt is doing things that are just kind of crazy to me. He had multiple reps against Bud Dupree and Khalil Mack and Tuli that were just like chef's kiss. Like this guy, his length, his power, his athleticism, it's all popping. Like Bud did get him on a couple run defense snaps, but he is just showing up as a tremendous pass protector already. And I really do think that from day one, this guy could be an above average offensive tackle. The run game was a bit of a mixed bag today, but Jared Patterson was actually the most explosive running back that I saw. He had a couple big runs, and he's on all core special teams players. Like, I can't believe this is happening, but Jared Patterson is a thing that is going to continue to happen. I think he makes this roster just because this team very clearly trusts him, particularly on third downs, particularly on special teams, particularly in pass protection. Yeah, they really like him, and he did have a couple of great runs today. So that was good to see because I had not seen that previously. The last thing, Darius Davis, very creative touches today. There was a speed option with Max Duggan. There was a jet sweep. There was a screen. There are vertical routes that are happening. He didn't get thrown the football today. But this regime, I think, is going to be much more intentional in getting Darius Davis the football. I think he is legitimately going to be a gadget kind of player for them, similar to what was his name? The guy from Texas, the Ravens guy. That's going to come back to me later, and it's going to bug me. Anyways, Darius Davis is going to get the football a lot more than last year, and I think Chargers fans should be excited about that. He's fast, he's twitchy, and his vision is just so good. So he's having a good camp as a receiver, and I think he'll take a step forward there. All righty, you guys. That's going to do it for me today. Appreciate all of you for tuning in. Again, make sure to like, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff. Make sure to check out our friends over at Prize Picks. They always do great stuff, especially as the USA men's basketball specials continue. Appreciate all of you guys. That's going to do it. As always, bolt up.